March in London hangs cold and heavy in the air. Inside a quiet flat in Lewisham, a tragedy that should never have existed was already unfolding. She, a Chinese student unraveling under relentless anxiety. A few red spots on her skin were enough to pull her into panic. She begged her boyfriend to get tested, for one reason only, to know she was safe. He, an American student from a privileged background, but faced with her fear, he offered no reassurance, only irritation, only coldness. And that night, as she lay on the floor, struggling to breathe, he didn't call an ambulance. He called his father across the ocean, and his first words were not, "She needs help," but, "Dad, I need your help." In that moment, everything broke. Her time stopped. His descent into darkness began. Welcome to Red Eastern True Crime. If you want to see more crime stories, please like and subscribe. Let's dive into this story. In February 2024, 31-year-old Chinese student Zhe Wang noticed several small red patches on her skin shortly after becoming intimate with her boyfriend Joshua. Concerned by the timing, she feared she may have contracted a sexually transmitted disease. Zhe Wang had a documented history of severe germophobia and health-related anxiety, which significantly intensified her reaction. As her fear escalated, she began to experience mounting panic and emotional distress. In the days that followed, she sent Joshua a series of messages that grew increasingly frequent and insistent, repeatedly requesting that he undergo an STD test, so she could confirm that no infection had been transmitted to her. Zhe Wang was born in China in 1993 and was 31 years old at the time of the incident. Prior to moving to London, she worked as an IELTS instructor, maintaining a stable career and a large student base. She was proficient in 5 languages. In the autumn of 2023, she relocated to the United Kingdom to pursue a master's degree in creative writing and education at Goldsmiths University of London. She had a strong interest in writing and demonstrated notable intellectual depth and creativity. Her professors described her as an exceptional writer, with a distinctive voice. Those who knew her described her as gentle, polite, and highly capable, while also sensitive and persistent in her character. She lived alone in a residential flat in Manor Park, Hither Green, and was actively adjusting to life in the UK, devoting herself to her academic work. Her boyfriend, Joshua J. Michals, was born in 1999 and was 25 years old at the time of the incident. He was from Chicago, Illinois, and came from a financially well-off family. His father was an executive at the U.S. subsidiary of the multinational electrical company Legrand, while his mother worked in graphic design and photography. Joshua's educational path reflected a typical upper-middle-class American background. He completed his undergraduate studies in filmmaking at DePaul University, with 4 years of tuition and living expenses, estimated to exceed $240,000 US. In 2023, he entered the UK on a student visa to pursue a 1-year master's degree in filmmaking at Goldsmiths University of London. He had technical experience in film production, including drone operation, and curated an artistic image on social media. Joshua resided in a high-end apartment in the Deptford area, with a notably high rent. Among peers, he was commonly described as quiet and introverted, yet well-educated. In September 2023, Zhe Wang and Joshua began their master's programs at Goldsmiths. They met through coursework and campus activities, and developed a casual relationship. As they were enrolled in different programs, they did not see each other regularly, and met only occasionally outside of class. In the early months, the relationship remained informal and low-key. Joshua later described the relationship as on and off. Over approximately 7 months, he estimated they met in person about 9 times, and acknowledged that his interest was limited. At times, he went weeks without contacting Zhe, while she was more likely to initiate communication and suggest meeting. Differences in personality and lifestyle gradually emerged. Zhe displayed pronounced germ-related anxiety, and an intense focus on cleanliness, which Joshua later described as unexpected and difficult for him to understand. From Zhe's perspective, Joshua appeared increasingly detached. She perceived him as inattentive to the relationship and unwilling to engage with concerns about personal health. These unresolved issues gradually deepened the rift between them. The relationship reached a turning point in early 2024. Between November 2023 and February 2024, the two went nearly 4 months without seeing each other. In late February, Zhe re-established contact as Joshua's interest appeared to fade, and the two became intimate. It was reportedly their first sexual encounter, occurring in the final week of February 2024. Rather than bringing clarity or closeness, the encounter marked the beginning of a rapid and irreversible unraveling. After noticing red spots on her skin, Zhe linked them to her encounter with Joshua. Unable to tolerate uncertainty, she became convinced she had contracted an STD and repeatedly urged him to get tested. As her anxiety intensified, her messages grew more insistent. The more distressed she became, the more Joshua withdrew, widening the distance between them. According to messages later recovered by police, in early March 2024, Zhe warned Joshua that if he continued to delay, she would go to campus and physically drag him to see a doctor. One message stated, "I will find you on campus and drag you to the GP." By mid-March 2024, the relationship had deteriorated into near-total hostility. Zhe was convinced she might have been infected and was both frightened and enraged. Joshua maintained that he had no symptoms and insisted he had never had an STD. On March 19th, the day before the killing, Zhe sent a series of angry messages, repeatedly writing, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you." Her emotional state had reached a breaking point, while Joshua's responses remained limited and unsympathetic. The dispute over STD testing became the final rupture in their relationship. On March 20th, 2024, Zhe suggested meeting in person to address their ongoing conflict over STD testing. She invited Joshua to her flat, and he agreed to come. In what he later described as an attempt to ease the tension, Joshua brought a charcuterie board, saying he hoped it would help normalize the atmosphere, which he characterized as weird. The effort failed. Less than an hour later, Joshua left the flat. Zhe was left behind, fatally stabbed and dying on the floor. At 11:08 p.m. on March 20th, the Metropolitan Police received a call from a man reporting a serious incident at a residential address in Manor Park, Hither Green. The caller stated that he was no longer at the scene. At approximately 11:20 p.m., police and paramedics forced entry into the flat and found 31-year-old Zhe Wang lying unresponsive on the bedroom floor. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Medical assessment later indicated she had died several hours earlier from severe blood loss and asphyxiation. The flat showed clear signs of a violent struggle. Furniture had been displaced, and blood spatter was visible on both the floor and the walls. Zhe sustained 2 obvious stab wounds to the face, as well as significant swelling around the neck, findings consistent with homicide. After canvassing neighbors and reviewing access records, investigators determined that the only recent visitor to the flat was a young male. Combined with information provided by Zhe's friends, police quickly identified Joshua Michals as the primary suspect. Using phone records associated with the emergency call, police traced Joshua's location to the nearby Deptford area. After confirming his identity as a Goldsmiths University student, officers proceeded to his residence. At approximately 11:50 p.m. on March 20th, police arrested Joshua at his apartment in Deptford. He remained calm during the arrest and did not resist. He was informed that he was being detained on suspicion of murder and was taken into custody. During subsequent interrogation, Joshua offered little cooperation. With legal counsel present, he repeatedly responded, "No comment." When questioned about critical issues, including the delay in contacting emergency services and the origin of injuries observed on his body, he either remained silent or provided evasive answers. At Zhe's flat, police recovered multiple blood-stained fingerprints belonging to Joshua. Although the murder weapon and Zhe's mobile phone were initially missing, investigators noted that a kitchen knife was unaccounted for and discovered torn fragments of clothing and personal items that appeared to have been ripped away during the struggle. A neighbor reported hearing a brief scream, followed by a dull impact at approximately 7:30 p.m., helping to establish the time of the assault. At Joshua's apartment in Deptford, officers located critical physical evidence. Bloodstained clothing, including a shirt and trousers, showed both spatter and smear patterns. DNA testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Zhe. In a rubbish bin inside the flat, police also found bloodstained tissues and adhesive bandages, believed to have been used to treat minor injuries Joshua sustained during the struggle. Investigators later determined that Joshua had disposed of both Zhe's mobile phone and the knife after the attack. Through coordinated searches with waste management services, police recovered the items at a waste processing facility. The phone was externally damaged, but remained functional enough for forensic data extraction. The kitchen knife contained blood and biological material matching Zhe, confirming it as the murder weapon. Digital forensic analysis revealed that Joshua had deleted all messages exchanged with Zhe. Specialists were able to recover the deleted data, which documented the deterioration of their relationship. Zhe's repeated requests for STD testing, the escalating arguments, and their final agreement to meet in person. Joshua's last message, "Here," corresponded precisely with Uber journey records. After 7:17 p.m., Zhe sent no further messages, and her phone was soon powered off. Together, these records allowed investigators to reconstruct the sequence of events with precision. CCTV footage captured Joshua entering Zhe's building at approximately 7:15 p.m., carrying a bag. At around 7:55 p.m., he was seen leaving the building quickly, no longer carrying the same items, before entering an Uber vehicle. Additional footage later recorded him returning to his residence at approximately 8:20 p.m., wearing a different coat and hat, apparently to obscure his appearance. With extensive physical, digital, and circumstantial evidence assembled, investigators submitted the case file to the Crown Prosecution Service in late March 2024. Joshua Michals was formally charged with murder. He was denied bail and remanded in custody at Belmarsh Prison, pending trial. Due to the seriousness of the charges and international attention, the trial was heard at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey. Proceedings ran from mid-November to early December 2025, overseen by Judge Richard Marks, KC. Joshua pleaded not guilty, claiming self-defense. During the extended pre-trial period, Joshua was extensively prepared by his legal team, led by senior barrister Brian St. Louis, KC. Zhe's parents traveled from China to attend most of the court proceedings and were provided with a Mandarin interpreter. Their quiet composure and visible grief drew considerable sympathy from those present in court. In her opening statement, prosecutor Henrietta Paget described the case as a brutal, anger-driven murder. The prosecution argued that following escalating disputes over STD accusations, Joshua lost control and attacked Zhe in rage. Forensic evidence showed prolonged neck compression and targeted facial stab wounds, which the Crown said demonstrated clear intent to cause serious harm, further supported by the significant imbalance in physical strength between the two. Joshua claimed that after arriving at the flat, he briefly used the bathroom and, upon exiting, was suddenly attacked by Zhe with a kitchen knife while she was in a highly agitated state. He said he reacted instinctively, that the stab wounds to her face were accidental during the struggle, and that he applied pressure to her neck only to prevent further attack. He insisted he never intended to harm her, and that the entire incident unfolded within seconds. Forensic evidence directly contradicted this account. Zhe's cause of death, severe blood loss from facial stab wounds combined with fatal neck compression, far exceeded the level of force consistent with reasonable self-defense. The court further examined Joshua's actions in the hours following the killing. Evidence showed that he cleaned the scene, removed and discarded key items, including Zhe's phone, slippers, and the knife, changed his clothes, and contacted his father instead of emergency services. He delayed calling 999 for nearly 4 hours. After returning home, Joshua immediately called his father, who then contacted a lawyer in the UK and advised him on next steps. Joshua remained composed and silent until 11:08 p.m., when he finally called emergency services, providing limited and incomplete information about what had occurred. Forensic analysis estimated that Zhe died at approximately 8 p.m., meaning she had already been dead for nearly 3 hours when Joshua made the emergency call. The prosecution was clear. The delay was deliberate. Joshua waited until there was no chance of survival. It was not panic, but a calculated decision. The defense sought to portray Zhe as mentally unstable, pointing to her germophobia, heightened emotional reactions, and excerpts from her creative writing. "I am anger. Anger is me. How can I eliminate me?" They argued that Joshua panicked, contacted legal counsel first due to cultural norms, and emphasized that he was generally gentle in character with no prior history of violence or criminal behavior. After nearly 2 weeks of testimony and approximately 16.5 hours of jury deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict on December 8, 2025, finding Joshua Michals guilty of murder. As the verdict was read, Joshua, dressed in a dark suit, stiffened, lowered his head, briefly closed his eyes, and then sat down without visible reaction. From the public gallery came subdued sobbing, as Zhe's parents, who had traveled across the world to attend the trial, quietly wept. Sentencing has not yet taken place. Based on comparable cases in the United Kingdom, Joshua is expected to receive a minimum term of between 18 and 25 years. Goldsmiths University informed staff and students of the verdict and held memorial events in Zhe's honor, reaffirming its support for her family and highlighting the importance of mental health and relationship safety on campus. After the verdict, Zhe's father told reporters through an interpreter, his voice trembling but steady, "We have finally received a fair judgment. It means a great deal to us." Her mother, holding back tears, said simply, "I hope our daughter can rest in peace. We miss her very much." Her professor, Dr. Francis Gilbert, remembered Zhe as a rare talent, combining intellectual depth with creativity. He recalled her quiet focus and the Buddhist calm in her writing, noting that she had been preparing to publish her work. "Now," he said, "we can only honor her by publishing her unfinished pieces." Classmates spoke of her kindness, teaching Chinese, sharing Eastern philosophy, comforting anxious peers, and helping others edit their work without seeking credit. Those who knew her described her as joyful and generous. These memories are the quiet light she left behind. There was no report said that she ever sought medical testing herself. Her terror, though medically unfounded, was driven by fear rather than fact. Joshua did not have an STD, and Zhe's panic was rooted in assumption, not diagnosis. Her insistence that Joshua be tested first was shaped by both her psychological state and her upbringing. Severe health anxiety made hospitals and medical tests deeply frightening for her. Testing meant confronting the possibility of illness. Her reasoning, that if infection existed, it must have come from him, was medically flawed, yet not uncommon among individuals experiencing extreme anxiety. Her distrust of Joshua intensified the situation further. Reports suggested that he did not view the relationship as exclusive and may have been involved with another woman. For someone emotionally sensitive and insecure, this uncertainty was devastating and amplified her fear. Cultural context also played a significant role. Raised in an environment where sex was rarely discussed and sexual illness was associated with shame, Zhe had learned to see STDs as moral stains rather than medical conditions. Women are often taught that if something goes wrong, the burden and the disgrace belongs to them alone. She sought certainty, because she had never been taught how to sit with fear, without turning it inward. Joshua's crime extended beyond his failure to call for help. It reflected a lifelong pattern of emotional detachment, avoiding responsibility, and prioritizing self-preservation. As a life slipped away in front of him, he acted on instinct, choosing to protect himself. Shielded from consequences for years, he was unprepared to face reality. In a culture that emphasizes self-interest, he never learned how to recognize a collapsing soul, or when to reach out a hand. Two entirely different souls collided in London, one searching desperately to be understood, the other retreating into distance, one reaching out in fear, the other pulling away to protect himself. The tragedy was not driven by hatred, but by emotional coldness, misunderstanding, and a distance between two worlds that never truly met. After that night, their paths split forever. Zhe's life ended at 31, all future possibilities sealed in the damp London air. Joshua's life changed, but it did not end. Even after prison, he will return to the United States, to a family that can support him, to resources and privilege that allow him to rebuild. Zhe Wang was not a perfect victim. Her anxiety intensified the conflict between her and Joshua, but she did not deserve to be killed, and she did not deserve to be left alone, waiting to die. The dead are granted no second chances, and a family that has lost a daughter will never experience spring in the same way again. Reality does not seek equal outcomes. The law can assign a sentence, but it cannot measure the true weight of a human life. What do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to hear more true crime stories, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.